The forest stirred gently as the first light of dawn filtered through the canopy, brushing the tops of towering trees with a soft, golden glow. Shadows, long and thin, retreated slowly, releasing the forest floor from the quiet embrace of night. A faint mist lingered between the trunks, curling like wisps of memory, catching the morning sun and scattering it into tiny prisms that danced across the leaves. Each droplet of dew hung like a tiny crystal, trembling slightly as if aware of the day to come. The air was crisp, carrying a faint sweetness, the scent of damp earth mingling with the delicate perfume of blooming flowers hidden beneath the undergrowth. In this quiet moment, the forest seemed to inhale, filling itself with possibility, anticipation, and life. A soft rustle announced the first movements of the forest's inhabitants. Birds, long silent, began their morning songs, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. A lone warbler trilled a high, wavering note, as if testing the air for resonance. Nearby, a pair of sparrows answered in kind, their voices layering together, forming a gentle, natural chorus that harmonized with the rhythm of the wind threading through branches. Somewhere deeper in the forest, a woodpecker tapped lightly against a trunk, its steady drumming a heartbeat echoing through the stillness. The symphony of life was subtle but unmistakable, an orchestra attuned to the awakening light. Beneath the towering trees, the forest floor was alive in quieter ways. Tiny ferns unfurled with deliberate grace, their curled tips reaching skyward as if greeting the sun. Mushrooms glistened with moisture, their caps glinting softly in the new light. And the underbrush stirred as small mammals ventured from hidden burrows, sniffing the air with cautious curiosity. Each movement, each sound, each shimmer of dew felt connected, part of a rhythm older than memory. It was as if the trees themselves had orchestrated the morning, coaxing every creature, every plant into participation. The notion that the forest knew this moment, that it recognized and responded to the subtle changes around it, lingered quietly in the mind, both unsettling and comforting in its implication. Sunlight continued its slow descent through the branches, a golden thread weaving between leaves and boughs, casting patterns on the soft soil below. The trees seemed to lean slightly toward one another, as if sharing the light, exchanging whispers that the wind could not carry. Leaves trembled not from the wind alone, but from some subtle awareness, a quiet vibration that suggested listening, remembering, responding. The forest was awake, not merely alive, but conscious in ways that defied ordinary perception. A child might have seen it as magic, a scientist as intricate biology, a poet as a living soul. And yet, in the morning's calm, none of these distinctions mattered. The forest simply existed in its full, unspoken understanding. The soundscape shifted as a small brook gurgled into awareness, tracing a delicate path through the undergrowth. Water, always moving, reflected the pale light, breaking it into countless fragments that shimmered like fragments of glass. Insects buzzed lazily above its surface, while a frog croaked intermittently from a hidden nook. The rhythm of the water, steady and persistent, seemed to pulse in harmony with the rustling leaves, the bird calls, the subtle movements of the earth itself. Each drop of water, each ripple carried a sense of attentiveness, as though the forest acknowledged even the smallest gestures of life. The air began to warm imperceptibly, a tender shift that brushed against the skin and seemed to settle in the chest, bringing with it a sense of deep, quiet possibility. A breeze wandered through, gentle yet purposeful, stirring the branches, rustling the moss, carrying with it 1,000 unspoken stories of nights past and days yet to come. The forest responded to it, leaning and bending in subtle conversation, a network of roots and leaves communicating silently, weaving connections imperceptible to the untrained eye. The sensation was more than beauty. It was intimacy, an invitation to witness life at its most intricate, most attentive. Above, the canopy opened gradually, allowing more sunlight to spill downward, spotlighting patches of forest floor in warm brilliance. A squirrel paused on a branch, ears twitching, its tail flicking as if acknowledging the light before continuing its morning journey. A deer emerged cautiously from a nearby thicket, nose lifted to the air, listening and breathing in the forest's pulse. Every creature moved with a grace and attentiveness that mirrored the trees themselves. Participants in a shared awareness that transcended the sum of their parts. Observing them, one could almost feel the consciousness of the forest brushing against their own, a subtle, humbling reminder of the intricate web of life. The forest was alive in patterns both grand and minute. Light and shadow played across trunks, revealing textures that hinted at years of silent observation. Scars and growth rings telling stories of survival, storms weathered, and sunlight cherished. Moss clung to bark in delicate carpets, softening edges and suggesting care, resilience, patience. Even the smallest leaves, damp with dew, seemed to shimmer with knowledge, oriented precisely to capture the earliest rays, to drink in what energy they could, each fulfilling its purpose with quiet devotion. The sense of awareness was pervasive, not forced, not intrusive, but profoundly present in the gentle orchestration of every element. As the sun climbed higher, the forest's morning reached a crescendo not in sound, but in sensation. Warmth, light, movement, scent, and sound wove together in a tapestry that both calmed and captivated, drawing the observer inward, encouraging reflection. One could imagine the trees exchanging silent signals through rustling leaves, that the birds, insects, and mammals responded not merely to instinct, but to a network of understanding, subtle and ancient. It was a place where curiosity naturally arose, where the mind could wander freely, where each sensory detail, damp earth, crisp air, soft light, became a lesson in attentiveness, presence, and quiet wonder. In these first moments of daylight, the forest revealed itself not as a static backdrop, but as a living, knowing entity. Each movement, each sound, each glint of dew carried intention, awareness, and subtle beauty. The morning light illuminated more than just the forest's physical form. It illuminated its character, its rhythm, its consciousness, and in that illumination, the observer, quiet, reflective, and patient, became part of the experience, invited into a shared awakening that transcended ordinary perception. The forest was not merely seen or heard, it was felt deeply, intuitively, in ways that resonated long after the first light had fully settled across the landscape. As the morning light strengthened, the forest settled into a rhythm, a quiet pulse that flowed through every branch, leaf, and root. A soft wind began to wander through the trees, tentative at first, brushing against bark and needle, then gathering confidence, threading through the canopy with a gentle insistence. It carried with it subtle messages, whispers that humans could almost hear if they paused long enough, breathed deeply enough, and quieted their racing thoughts. The wind was more than air in motion. It was a messenger, a conductor of an intricate symphony, shaping life in ways both invisible and profound. From high above, the canopy seemed to murmur with its own language. Leaves rustled with a purpose that went beyond responding to the breeze. They leaned, twisted, and vibrated in patterns that suggested conversation. Some trembled to warn their neighbors of shifting light or moisture. Others swayed deliberately, sharing the hint of approaching warmth or the promise of rain. Even the tiniest saplings, fragile and tender, bent slightly in acknowledgement, aligning themselves to catch the messages carried through this silent network. The forest communicated not with words, but with motion, energy, and resonance. Every flicker of a leaf, every quiver of a branch, was a sentence in a dialogue that had been ongoing for millennia. Beneath the towering giants, the undergrowth responded in kind. Ferns uncurled more boldly when the sunlight shifted their way. Moss deepened in color as the wind carried warmth through hidden hollows, and flowers subtly tilted toward the invisible signals, orienting themselves for optimal growth. Even roots entwined beneath the soil pulsed with quiet awareness, stretching and shifting toward moisture and nutrients, avoiding obstacles with a silent intelligence. In this underground world, messages traveled through chemical exchanges and gentle vibrations, a secret language that human senses could barely perceive. Yet, it was as real and deliberate as the most carefully spoken word, guiding the forest's development with patience and precision. Every sound in the forest contributed to this tapestry of communication. A bird's song, simple in appearance, carried multiple layers of meaning. It announced presence, warned of predators, or called to a mate. Insects hummed or chirped, their signals weaving into the larger conversation, subtle yet essential. The brook's flowing water provided a constant, soft background, reflecting movement and alerting those nearby to shifts in moisture or temperature. Even the quiet tapping of a woodpecker became part of the dialogue, its rhythm suggesting awareness of patterns, of opportunity, of timing. To stand in the forest was to enter a world where sound and silence blended seamlessly, each note carrying a purpose that went beyond immediate survival. The wind wandered further, carrying scents and vibrations that traveled unseen. Pollen, spores, and the faint fragrance of damp soil were not merely passive elements. They were messengers in their own right. Seeds responded to chemical cues, sprouting only when the conditions were ideal, guided by invisible signals from the surrounding ecosystem. Trees that had grown together for decades, their roots intertwined beneath the earth, seemed to coordinate growth, adjusting pace and direction to ensure harmony in the canopy. It was a network of cooperation so subtle that it could almost be mistaken for happenstance. Yet it was deliberate, intelligent, and deeply intertwined with the forest's ongoing life. Sunlight danced across this living network, accentuating the patterns of movement. Shadows shifted in rhythm with the wind, highlighting leaves that bent toward one another as if exchanging secret knowledge. Even the smallest insect's flight path followed invisible cues, avoiding collisions, seeking shelter, or locating food with a precision that suggested participation in this grand dialogue. The forest moved as one entity, its components responding to each other in delicate synchrony, as though guided by an unseen conductor. The feeling of witnessing this subtle choreography evoked awe, a gentle reminder that life is more interconnected than casual observation often reveals. Sometimes, the signals were so faint that only patience could reveal them. A sudden rustle in the underbrush, a brief shiver along a branch, a fleeting shadow that moved without obvious cause. These were moments when the forest's quiet intelligence brushed against human perception. A deer paused mid-step, ears twitching, chest rising and falling as if listening to the invisible currents. Tiny insects adjusted their course as the wind shifted. A cluster of ferns leaned subtly in unison, their movements almost imperceptible, yet coordinated. In such moments, it felt as if the forest itself had acknowledged the observer's presence, offering a glimpse into its hidden awareness without uttering a single word. Beneath this subtle communication lay a rhythm of growth and response. Trees shaped their neighbors by sharing light and shade, sending signals through roots and leaves that encouraged cooperation or defense. When one tree sensed stress, be it from pests, disease, or environmental changes, it would release chemical messages that triggered reactions in surrounding plants. Leaves hardened, roots shifted, and growth adjusted, all in response to cues that moved silently through the network. These interactions were gentle yet purposeful, a constant negotiation, a shared decision-making process that ensured the forest thrived as a whole rather than as isolated parts. Movement carried meaning as well. The slow sway of branches under the wind's caress suggested reassurance, an affirmation of balance and stability. The rustle of leaves near a trail indicated awareness, caution, or guidance for those passing through. Even the fall of a single leaf was a message, a contribution to the soil, a cycle acknowledged by roots and fungi alike. In every gesture, there was intention, subtle yet unmistakable, shaping the forest's ongoing story. Standing within this environment, one could sense the invisible threads connecting life, stretching from the tallest tree to the smallest moss, forming a living network of communication that was both intimate and immense. The forest seemed to breathe as the wind continued its wandering, inhaling and exhaling in synchrony with the smallest movements. Air carried the stories of nights past, of rainstorms survived, of sunrises watched over centuries. Each leaf, each branch, each creature became a participant in this ongoing narrative, contributing to the forest's collective memory. It was a dialogue without words, yet it spoke volumes to those willing to listen. Curiosity arose naturally, a gentle wonder at the unseen intelligence guiding growth, movement, and survival. Every sense, every thought, every heartbeat felt connected to this subtle rhythm, inviting reflection and deep appreciation. By mid-morning, the forest had fully awakened to its own conversation. Light, wind, sound, and movement intertwined, creating an environment alive not just in form, but in function, awareness, and interaction. The trees continued to lean toward each other. Roots exchanged nutrients. Leaves shimmered with the acknowledgement of subtle signals, and every creature responded to the network in its own way. To observe it was to witness cooperation and intelligence woven into the very fabric of life. A gentle awe settled in the chest of anyone present, a recognition that even in stillness the forest was speaking, listening, and shaping itself with a quiet deliberation. In this place of whispering winds and invisible currents, the forest's consciousness became tangible, if not fully visible. It was an intelligence expressed through motion, growth, sound, and scent. A presence felt rather than explained. Each gesture, each interaction, each subtle signal revealed layers of connection, cooperation, and attentiveness. And as the observer stood among the swaying trees and rustling leaves, curiosity deepened. A gentle longing to understand, to perceive, and to honor the invisible dialogues shaping every aspect of life. Here, in the quiet awe of the forest's subtle communication, the world seemed larger, more deep beneath the roots, where sunlight never reaches and sound is softened to a low hum. The forest hides its most astonishing secret. The world below the surface is alive with quiet motion, threads of life weaving together in a tapestry far more intricate than anything seen above. Fungi stretch through the soil like living veins, connecting tree to tree, shrub to seedling, forming a vast underground web. Through these delicate filaments, the forest shares its thoughts. What seems like stillness is, in truth, constant communication, a whispering exchange of energy and information. When scientists first placed sensors into the soil, they expected to record silence. Instead, they found signals, tiny pulses, chemical messages, and even faint electrical patterns moving from root to root. A mother tree, towering above the canopy, could send nourishment to her shaded offspring. A sapling under stress could alert its neighbors to invading pests, prompting them to produce defensive chemicals before danger arrived. This was not folklore. It was biology, measured, mapped, and confirmed, revealing that trees share secrets is not poetry but fact. The forest's intelligence is distributed, a living network of awareness that has thrived for millions of years. Imagine standing at the base of an ancient oak. Its bark is rough, its trunk immense, but its true presence lies beneath. From its roots extend thousands of delicate tendrils, each connecting to other roots, fungi, and microbes. Messages travel through this network at a patient, deliberate pace, slower than speech, slower than breath, but no less purposeful. Carbon, nitrogen, and water move alongside signals that carry meaning. One tree senses drought, another excess moisture, and through the web, they balance the difference, sharing resources in a way that keeps the forest whole. What humans might call generosity is, in the language of nature, equilibrium. Above ground, this intelligence expresses itself through timing and coordination. A forest knows when to bloom. It feels the gradual lengthening of daylight, the subtle shift of temperature, and reacts as a single organism. Trees hundreds of feet apart flower within the same days, their synchronization so precise that it seems planned. Beneath that order lies communication, roots and fungi sharing chemical cues, ensuring the entire ecosystem moves together. The forest's rhythm, once thought to be random, is in truth orchestrated by its own inner mind. This idea once startled even the scientists who discovered it. The notion that plants might think felt absurd to many, a challenge to centuries of assumption. Yet evidence kept growing. When a leaf is chewed by an insect, nearby leaves begin to produce protective compounds before the invader reaches them. When one plant is shaded, others adjust their growth angles, allowing shared access to light. Plants release airborne chemicals that warn others of stress, forming invisible waves of communication through scent. Each action, though silent, carries intent and awareness, a form of knowledge without a nervous system. The more closely one observes, the more remarkable the patterns become. Electrical impulses flash through stems and roots in response to touch or damage, echoing the way nerves fire in animals. Roots slow their growth when they sense nearby roots of their own species, avoiding conflict and competition. They steer instead toward cooperation, exchanging nutrients and information through fungal partners. Even seedlings, delicate and new to the world, recognize family, responding differently to related plants than to strangers. This subtle intelligence challenges every boundary humans once drew between conscious and unconscious life. Standing in such a forest, the realization feels almost spiritual. Each tree, each blade of grass is part of a grand conversation. A conversation that began long before humans arrived and will continue long after. The idea that the forest is aware changes the way one listens. The rustle of leaves becomes more than sound. It is expression. The bend of a branch is no longer just motion. It is response. Wonder rises naturally from this understanding, not from mystery but from recognition. The world is not mute. It is speaking constantly, if only we learn how to hear. At dusk, when shadows lengthen and the first cool breeze slips through the canopy, the forest's hidden life grows even more active. The underground network hums with the exchange of sugars gathered through the day. Nutrients flow from the strong to the weak, from the sunlit to the shaded, ensuring survival for all. Above, the leaves relax their guard, releasing the day's heat into the cooling air. It is easy to believe the forest is resting, but in truth, it is thinking, redistributing, recalibrating. remembering. Each night renews its internal balance. Each dawn begins a new chapter in its continuous conversation. Scientists sometimes call this the Wood Wide Web, an elegant term that captures both the complexity and the cooperation within these networks. Yet even that phrase feels too mechanical for what the forest truly does. This is not technology. It is life remembering itself, organizing its parts through instinct and intuition rather than design. Intelligence here is not concentrated in one place. It flows, diffuse and constant, through every living cell. It does not seek to dominate but to harmonize, to keep the music of the forest in tune. If one kneels close to the soil, pressing an ear to the ground, imagination takes over. You can almost sense the murmuring below, the faint crackle of movement, the pulse of communication. Roots stretch toward one another like hands reaching in greeting. Fungi send glowing threads of connection through the dark, linking strangers, mending gaps, maintaining continuity. The forest below the surface mirrors the stars above, a vast network of lights, each connected, each dependent on the other, each aware of its place in the pattern. The awareness is not human, not emotional, not deliberate in the way of thought, yet it exists unmistakably. The forest solves problems, adapts, shares, and remembers. It has learned over endless seasons how to endure. That endurance is not mindless persistence. It is wisdom, encoded in chemistry, structure, and rhythm. When lightning strikes or droughts arrive, the network shifts, preserving what can be saved, sacrificing what must be lost. Such choices reveal something profound. The forest is not only alive, it behaves as though it understands life itself. And so, as twilight deepens and the calls of birds fade into the hush of night, the forest's secret life continues unseen. Beneath the quiet surface, messages ripple outward, shaping tomorrow's growth. Above, the branches sway gently, their leaves catching the last glimmers of fading light. In this stillness lies a living intelligence, calm, patient, endless. Beneath the soil lies a hidden world, older than the forest itself and more intricate than any map could capture. Here, in the cool darkness below roots and stones, life spreads in delicate, glowing threads. These threads are not roots, though they often intertwine with them. They are fungi, weaving unseen highways through the earth. The forest above depends on this invisible network, an underground web of connections so vast and complex that even the oldest trees rely on it to think, share, and survive. The mycorrhizal network, as scientists call it, is nature's own internet. Through it, trees and plants communicate in chemical language, exchanging nutrients, information, and even warnings. What looks to the eye like simple dirt is, in truth, a living mesh. Tiny filaments stretching mile after mile beneath every forest floor. Each filament, finer than a hair, is alive, sensing and responding to its surroundings. Together, they form a vast communication system linking nearly every plant to its neighbor. This ancient partnership between fungus and root is one of the most successful collaborations on Earth. The word mycorrhiza itself comes from Greek, myx meaning fungus, and rhiza meaning root. It is a fitting name, for the two are inseparable. The fungi wrap themselves around or within plant roots, forming intricate connections where both partners benefit. The fungus receives sugars created by the tree through photosynthesis. In return, it provides the tree with minerals, water, and protection. But beyond trade, there is communication. Chemical signals pass through these threads, allowing trees to share messages that travel far beyond what their roots alone could reach. When one tree faces drought, its roots send distress signals through the fungal web. Neighboring trees respond, adjusting their water usage, slowing their growth, conserving energy. When pests attack a single plant, Nearby vegetation begins preparing defenses before the insects even arrive. This responsiveness reveals an awareness that feels almost intelligent. It is not thought in the human sense, but it is coordination, cooperation, and decision-making all the same. The forest acts as a single body, its members bound together by threads of life no thicker than a strand of silk. If one could shrink small enough to walk among these fungal highways, the sight would be astonishing. Glowing veins of hyphae, the building blocks of fungi, would stretch in every direction, branching, merging, and splitting again, connecting roots like neural pathways in a brain. Each strand would pulse faintly with nutrients and chemical messages, moving sugars, nitrogen, and water along invisible roots. The air would hum softly with energy, not sound but vibration, the constant rhythm of transfer and exchange. Every root tip would glow with quiet communication, like distant stars sending signals across space. This system is not static. It changes constantly, expanding into new soil, withdrawing from depleted ground, seeking balance and opportunity. Fungal networks respond to shifts in weather, temperature, and moisture, reorganizing themselves to ensure the forest's survival. They can even recognize individual trees, remembering connections from past seasons. Some fungi link trees of the same species more tightly, while others connect different kinds of plants, weaving them into one vast family. Through these interactions, the forest learns, adapts, and remembers. Scientists once believed that plants competed relentlessly for resources, locked in silent battle for sunlight and soil. But research into these fungal connections revealed something far richer: cooperation. In some forests, ancient mother trees distribute nutrients through the mycorrhizal network to younger shaded saplings. These elders feed their offspring, sustaining them until they are strong enough to reach the light. When the mother tree dies, her stored carbon flows through the network into the roots of others, leaving behind not emptiness, but nourishment. Death becomes a final act of giving, a continuation of life through connection. It is through these fungal highways that forests maintain their balance. Nutrients are not held selfishly. They are shared, directed toward where they are needed most. The fungi act as mediators, sensing which roots require more or less and adjusting flow accordingly. In times of abundance, they distribute plenty. In times of scarcity, they ration carefully, ensuring no single member of the community collapses entirely. This quiet fairness, this natural equilibrium, keeps the forest stable through drought, flood, and fire. The beauty of this system lies not only in its function, but in its humility. The fungi ask for little, just sugar, the product of sunlight captured by their green partners. They live in darkness, unseen, their role largely invisible, yet they shape the fate of entire ecosystems. Without them, trees would starve, soil would erode, and forests would fade. Fungi turn decay into renewal, converting fallen leaves and dead wood into life-giving minerals. They are the unseen custodians of continuity, maintaining the forest's health through cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. The relationship is so deep that it blurs the line between individual and community. Where does one tree end and another begin when they share their roots and resources? The boundaries dissolve underground, replaced by an awareness that identity in nature is fluid. What we call a forest is not a collection of separate trees, but a single living organism made up of many parts. The fungi are its connective tissue, binding it together, allowing it to act as one. In some parts of the world, these networks stretch for astonishing distances. The largest known organism on Earth is not a whale or a redwood. It is a single fungus in Oregon's Blue Mountains, spanning over 2,000 acres. Its underground threads have been growing quietly for thousands of years, linking countless trees into one immense system. It is a reminder that scale in nature often hides beneath the surface, unseen by human eyes yet vital to the planet's balance. The more scientists uncover about these mycorrhizal webs, the more mysterious they become. They seem capable not only of carrying resources but of processing information. Signals are prioritized, slowed, or redirected depending on need. Certain connections strengthen while others fade, mimicking learning and memory. The fungal network behaves like a biological brain, not conscious in a human sense but functionally similar. It senses, reacts, and adapts. The forest's intelligence does not live in any one tree or organism. It is distributed across thousands of miles of thread-like filaments. For those who walk through a forest without knowing this, the world seems quiet. For those who understand, every step feels alive with communication. Each crunch of soil beneath a boot disturbs a living web. Each fallen leaf becomes a message, carried downward into the earth where fungi and roots read its meaning. The ground beneath one's feet is not dead. It is awake, a world in motion. And in that awareness lies awe, the quiet realization that even stillness in nature is an illusion. The partnership between roots and fungi is one of trust built over hundreds of millions of years. It began in prehistoric times, when the first plants ventured onto land. Without fungal allies, they could not have survived. The fungi broke down rock into soil, absorbed minerals, and delivered them to the plants. In return, the plants shared the sugars they made from sunlight. Together, they transformed barren landscapes into green worlds. Every forest, every blade of grass, every field of flowers is a legacy of that ancient alliance. Modern science continues to uncover how complex these relationships are. Certain fungi favor specific tree species, forming loyal partnerships, while others are generous connectors, linking multiple plants at once. Some networks are shallow and local. Others dive deep and wide, spanning entire ecosystems. The balance between cooperation and competition shifts constantly, maintaining a living tension that keeps the forest dynamic. Nothing is wasted. Even decay becomes dialogue. Fallen logs and rotting leaves feed fungi, who return the favor by nurturing new growth. To think of fungi as simple decomposers is to overlook their genius. They are architects, engineers, and communicators. They regulate the forest's chemistry, its rhythm, its resilience. When lightning strikes and trees burn, the fungi retreat deeper, biding their time. When rains return, they rebuild, sending new filaments outward to reconnect what was lost. Their patience defies human measure. Growth and decay are not opposites to them, but phases of the same endless cycle. And so, while the forest above may seem still, the true activity hums below in corridors of lightless energy. The underground highways are more than pathways. They are lifelines, thought lines, storylines written in living thread. Every connection matters. Every signal ripples outward, affecting something else. The soil, once considered inert, reveals itself as a vibrant network, alive with purpose. To walk through a forest knowing this is to feel part of something vast and enduring. Each tree, beneath the surface of the forest floor, where light cannot reach and sound does not carry, another kind of conversation is taking place. It moves not through air but through the dark veins of the earth, in slow pulses and invisible flows. Roots stretch out in all directions, thin as threads or thick as the arms of an ancient being, reaching, touching, and intertwining with one another. What seems still from above is alive with exchanges below. Here, the forest speaks in chemistry, in signals carried by water and minerals, in molecules that whisper warnings and comfort alike. Imagine a great oak standing tall after a sudden storm, its leaves torn, its bark scratched by wind-tossed branches. The damage runs deep, but the oak does not suffer alone. Through its roots, it releases faint chemical traces, distress signals carried in the flow of sap and soil moisture. Nearby trees, silent to our eyes but listening in their own way, receive the message. Within hours, their own internal chemistry shifts. They begin to produce bitter compounds in their leaves, readying themselves against the same danger. To the human ear, there is no sound, no cry, no word exchanged. Yet an entire network has stirred in response. This underground communication is not new, though only recently have we begun to understand it. For centuries, we assumed plants were passive, mere recipients of nature's forces, wind, sun, and rain. But the forest has always been an intricate community, one that trades in information as much as in nutrients. The soil, rich with fungal filaments and microscopic life, becomes the messenger. The fine tips of roots, sensitive and alive, act as sensors, recognizing chemical changes in the surrounding earth. Through these networks, a signal can travel astonishing distances, connecting trees that may stand meters or even kilometers apart. Scientists have watched this hidden dialogue unfold in careful experiments. When one plant is attacked by insects, its roots begin to exude specific compounds, molecules that warn others of the same species nearby. Those neighbors respond before the danger even arrives, strengthening their defenses. Some release scents into the air, chemical cries that drift above the ground, while others rely entirely on the subterranean network. The result is coordination, a kind of mutual protection that turns the forest into something greater than the sum of its trees. Think of it as an underground city, always awake. Nutrients flow like commerce between neighbors. Signals flash like news through invisible channels. When drought comes, certain trees share their reserves of water and sugar through their roots. When disease spreads, they may isolate themselves, closing their chemical doors. Even fallen leaves and decomposing trunks play their part, releasing messages that inform the living what is past and what remains. There is something almost human in the way this system behaves. A mother tree, an old central figure in the network, may sense the struggling sapling growing in her shade. Through the mycorrhizal connections, she sends small pulses of carbon and nitrogen, helping it grow stronger. The young tree, in turn, learns the rhythm of the forest through this quiet nurturing. The relationship is both biological and emotional, if we allow ourselves to see it that way. A network of care that exists without thought, yet feels profoundly intentional. Underneath the calm surface of the forest floor, roots move with purpose. They avoid stones, seek water, and curve toward nutrients. But they also sense the roots of others, sometimes avoiding them, sometimes entwining like fingers interlocked. In dense forests, these roots can recognize kin from strangers. Trees of the same species share more freely, while outsiders compete or keep their distance. Still, the communication continues, complex and layered, more like a symphony than a war. Each signal, each molecule, has meaning depending on who receives it and when. Picture a grove of acacias under attack by hungry insects. The first tree to suffer sends chemical warnings through both air and soil. Within moments, the neighboring trees begin to release defensive tannins that make their leaves less appetizing. But what the wind starts, the roots amplify. The message carried underground reaches those beyond the sense reach, trees standing far from the source, alerted by the earth itself. The forest, in this way, becomes self-aware, responsive, and alive in ways that defy simple explanation. It is easy to forget that these interactions are physical, not magical. Molecules travel through water-filled pores between root hairs, guided by gradients and pressure. The timing, however, feels deliberate. A wounded leaf may begin a chain reaction that ripples through dozens of organisms, from bacteria in the soil to the tallest canopy. The information does not fade with distance. It transforms, adapted to the local conditions, shaped by the receiving organism's needs. Like a whisper passed along in a crowd, it changes slightly with each retelling, yet the essence remains intact. To walk through a forest with this knowledge is to hear its quiet pulse in every step. The crunch of leaves, the smell of damp earth, the filtered light, all are surface signs of a deeper, living network beneath. Roots you cannot see are brushing past each other just underfoot. Messages are traveling in slow motion, telling of rain to come, pests to avoid, and neighbors in need. Every tree you pass is part of that unseen community, connected by invisible threads of life. And yet, this communication is not only about survival. It also maintains balance. When one species grows too dominant, others respond chemically, slowing its expansion. When nutrients are scarce, signals encourage cooperation rather than competition. Fungi, bacteria, and plant roots together create the rules of this hidden society. The language they use, sugars, acids, and volatile compounds, is ancient, far older than speech. For the forest, communication is not an act of intention, but of existence. To be alive is to send and receive messages constantly. A root that senses drought alters its chemistry. That change becomes a signal for others to prepare. A fungus that detects decay redirects its growth, steering away from poisoned soil. Every response creates another message in a never-ending feedback loop. It is a conversation so intricate that no human language could capture its full vocabulary. At times, the forest seems to breathe as one. After a long rain, moisture surges through the soil, awakening connections that had lain dormant through dry days. Nutrients flow more freely, roots grow faster, signals spread farther. It is as if the entire network sighs in relief, communicating gratitude in molecules instead of words. By contrast, in times of drought, those same channels tighten, conserving resources. Yet even then, communication continues, reduced, slower but persistent. The forest never falls silent. To imagine trees as individuals is to miss half the story. They are nodes in a vast network, players in an orchestra whose music unfolds in molecules and roots. Their strength lies not in solitude but in connection. What one tree knows, others may soon learn. What one tree suffers, others may help to heal. The boundaries between them blur underground, where cooperation replaces competition, and life is sustained by shared awareness. Next time you stand among trees, remember what lies beneath. The roots under your feet are speaking, softly, patiently, and constantly. They tell of rain, of hunger, of sunlight filtered through countless leaves. They speak of balance and of endurance. And though you cannot hear their language, you are part of it too. For every breath you take returns to them as nourishment, and every tree you see gives you the air that carries your thoughts. In the silent exchange between human and forest, the oldest conversation continues still, unbroken, deep in the quiet depth of the forest, where time moves differently and every breath of wind carries meaning. An invisible form of governance unfolds. There are no rulers, no written laws, no speeches or crowns. Yet a kind of democracy exists here, an order rooted in balance, cooperation, and collective survival. Each tree, from the towering elder to the smallest seedling, plays a role in maintaining harmony. Together they form a society of slow thinkers, deliberate in every gesture, communicating through patience and shared purpose. If you were to stand in an ancient forest, you might first notice the grand old trees rising like sentinels above the canopy. Their trunks bear scars of storms long past. Their crowns stretch wide enough to cradle birds, moss, and sunlight alike. Beneath their shade, Young saplings struggle upward, their fragile leaves trembling in patches of light. It might seem that the elders hoard the sky for themselves, but beneath the surface, the story is different. Their roots reach down and outward, forming bridges to the younger trees. Through those underground channels, they share carbon, water, and nutrients, gifts of life passed quietly from generation to generation. Scientists call these ancient giants mother trees, and their influence reaches far beyond their own roots. When a mother tree senses her offspring nearby, she treats them differently from strangers. She sends them more food, more water, even protective signals when danger comes. The younger trees in return respond to her chemistry as a child might respond to a mother's voice. This bond is neither sentimental nor conscious, yet it mirrors the same nurturing rhythm that binds families in every living species. The forest, it seems, raises its young together. In this silent democracy, every action ripples outward. When one tree suffers, the others feel it. When one thrives, the wealth is shared. It is not perfect equality. Some species naturally dominate the upper canopy while others dwell in the shade. But it is a form of balance born of cooperation rather than control. There are moments of tension too. Vines compete for sunlight. Roots wrestle for space. Fungi claim fallen wood before it decays completely. Yet even competition has its place in the forest's social fabric. It drives adaptation, ensuring that the strongest and most resilient forms of life continue to evolve. The beauty of this natural order lies in its self-regulation. No one dictates how much carbon should pass between roots, or which trees should fall when storms come. Instead, the forest behaves like a living community that has learned to sustain itself through give and take. It is not chaos but a quiet negotiation. Older trees sense when it is time to slow their growth, allowing the younger generation to rise. Dead trunks become fertile ground for new seedlings, a final act of contribution rather than decay. In this cycle, death is not an end but a vote cast for renewal. Sometimes human words like society, family, and democracy feel too small for what truly happens here. These trees do not reason or plan, yet the patterns they create mirror the ethics we strive for: generosity, equality, cooperation. A forest is not ruled by dominance but by interconnectedness. Each participant, tree, moss, fungus, or fern, depends on countless others to survive. It is as if the forest has discovered the wisdom of unity, long before humans began to dream of community. Walk through a grove of beeches or birches, and you will sense this invisible order. Each trunk rises at a respectful distance from its neighbor, allowing space for both roots and light. When wind passes through, the branches sway together, avoiding collision, adjusting their motion to the rhythm of others. This isn't random. Studies have shown that trees can sense the movement and touch of nearby branches, changing their own growth to prevent harm to one another. Their choreography, though silent, is a form of cooperation written into their very being. The concept of forest democracy is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a reflection of how nature distributes power and responsibility. Energy flows where it is needed most. When drought comes, the network prioritizes the youngest and weakest trees, ensuring survival of the whole. When pests invade, the community mobilizes defenses collectively. The elders, having lived through countless trials, still play their part, using their deep roots and chemical wisdom to stabilize the soil and balance moisture levels. They do not lead through dominance, but through contribution. It's tempting to view this behavior through human eyes, as if the forest holds meetings underground or elects representatives in the dark. But what truly happens is simpler and more profound. Every root, every fungal thread, Every molecule of carbon participates in a constant negotiation of life. There is no central authority, only feedback. Millions of small decisions made moment by moment, guided by the needs of all. The forest listens to itself. It adjusts. It endures. This natural democracy also reveals something humbling about our place in the world. Humans build systems of government, draft laws, and struggle to balance power, often forgetting that nature has been doing so for millennia. Without speeches, without greed, without ambition, the forest reminds us that cooperation is not weakness. It is wisdom. The slow exchange of resources, the patience to wait one's turn for sunlight, the willingness to share excess with those in need. These are lessons written not in words, but in roots and leaves. Even the decay of a fallen tree plays a democratic role. Its nutrients return to the soil, feeding fungi, insects, and new growth. Nothing is wasted, nothing is forgotten. Every fallen giant becomes a bridge for others to cross. Over years, the stump softens, becomes moss, then soil, then seed. In that transformation, it continues to serve the collective good. The forest's strength lies in this endless cycle of giving, an unbroken chain of generosity that transcends time. At the heart of this balance is trust. The trees do not hoard endlessly, fearing scarcity. They trust the rhythm of seasons, the return of rain, the continuity of the cycle. This quiet faith allows them to share freely, to stretch their roots toward one another instead of away. And though this trust is not conscious, it is powerful. It is the kind of harmony humanity often seeks but seldom sustains. As dusk falls, the forest grows still, yet its democracy continues unseen. Nutrients move, signals pass. The night creatures emerge to play their part in the endless negotiation. Each rustle, each hum of life, is another voice in the great conversation. The boundaries between individual and collective fade here. Everything is connected by purpose, by shared being. The forest does not vote, yet every life within it matters equally. If we listen closely, perhaps we can hear what the trees have known all along, that strength lies not in standing tallest, but in standing together. A single tree may reach the sky, but a forest shapes the world. Beneath every canopy lies a lesson in coexistence, written in silence, spoken through the roots. The democracy of the forest does not promise fairness in the human sense. It promises balance, a living reminder that survival and generosity are not opposites, but partners. When you next walk through a woodland, take a moment to feel the ground beneath your feet. It is alive with history, conversation, and care. The trees around you are not isolated beings, but participants in an ancient council that has convened since before humankind began to dream of civilization. Their laws are written in the pulse of the earth, their decisions measured in centuries, their debates conducted in silence. And yet, in that silence lies the wisdom of life itself, the oldest democracy on earth, thriving quietly, rooted in connection, guided by the rhythm high above the roots and soil. Beyond the slow pulse of the underground world, another language drifts through the open air, a language made not of words or gestures, but of sense. To most, the forest air feels merely fresh and clean, a pleasant fragrance of leaves and bark. But to those who can sense it, it is alive with meaning. Each wisp of aroma, each invisible molecule rising from the green, carries information. These are the forest's airborne messages, subtle and swift, whispered between trees, leaves, and insects in a vocabulary older than time itself. When sunlight touches the canopy, the leaves begin their daily work, drinking in light and releasing oxygen. But something else begins too. A flow of volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, that seep into the atmosphere like faint breaths. To the human nose, some of these scents are sweet, like pine resin or crushed grass. Others are sharp, almost electric, reminders of sap and life. Yet every one of them has purpose. Each molecule is a tiny messenger, moving from one organism to another, carrying warnings, invitations, or declarations of readiness. Imagine a single acacia tree in the African savanna, standing beneath a hot wind. A herd of antelope begins to graze, nibbling its tender leaves. Within minutes, the acacia senses the damage, the tug on its fibers, the chemical traces of saliva. In response, it releases a rush of VOCs into the air, a complex bouquet of scents that to us might seem like nothing more than the smell of cut grass. But nearby acacias recognize it instantly. They respond by flooding their own leaves with bitter tannins, making them unappetizing before the antelope even arrive. This is not instinct alone. It is communication, rapid and purposeful, carried by the wind. The idea that trees can talk through air feels like something out of a fable, yet the science is clear. These scents are real messages, composed of molecules that move through the atmosphere in waves invisible to us. Some reach only a few meters, others drift across entire valleys. In the stillness of early morning, when the air is heavy with dew and mist, these chemical signals hang like an unseen web connecting every leaf. A tree damaged by caterpillars can trigger defensive reactions in dozens of neighbors before a single predator arrives. The forest in this way becomes an organism that can sense, react, and adapt collectively. It's not all warnings and defense, though. Sometimes VOCs serve as invitations. Flowers release them to attract pollinators, sending specific notes into the wind. Floral signatures tuned to the senses of bees, butterflies, or bats. A bloom that opens at night sends out a scent heavy with sweetness, meant for nocturnal visitors. A fruiting tree may call to animals that can spread its seeds, offering aroma as promise. Even decaying wood contributes to this language, signaling to fungi and insects that the time for decomposition has come. Every stage of life, from birth to decay, is written in scent. What makes these signals extraordinary is their precision. A plant doesn't just release a random cloud of perfume. It adjusts its chemistry based on the situation. The compounds vary depending on the attacker, the time of day, even the weather. When heat rises, VOCs evaporate faster, carrying messages farther. When rain falls, they cling to droplets, moving closer to the ground. The forest modulates its communication as carefully as a musician adjusting notes to fit a changing rhythm. To walk among these silent conversations is to move through a sea of invisible meaning. The pine that fills the air with its resinous aroma after a storm is not simply refreshing the forest. It is disinfecting the air and signaling recovery. The scent of cut grass, that familiar smell we associate with freshness, is actually a cry for help. A chemical alarm released by damaged blades to alert others nearby. Even crops in open fields participate in this dialogue, releasing VOCs that attract predators of their pests, calling for allies rather than suffering in silence. In the stillness of an old-growth forest, these exchanges form a kind of harmony. Every species contributes its tone. Oak and cedar, fern and moss, mushroom and pine. The result is a living symphony, inaudible but constant, a chorus of chemical voices singing the story of survival. When you breathe deeply in such a place, you are not just inhaling air, you are entering the forest's living language, taking part in its endless conversation. Researchers have found that VOCs even affect the climate in subtle ways. When trees release these molecules, they can influence cloud formation. The particles act as seeds for condensation, helping moisture gather and fall as rain. In this way, The forest not only communicates within itself, but also speaks to the sky, shaping weather patterns that sustain life below. The language of scent reaches beyond biology. It touches the entire ecosystem, linking soil, air, and atmosphere in one continuous dialogue. There's something profoundly humbling about realizing that communication existed long before speech. For millions of years, plants have been exchanging messages through air, responding to danger, sharing opportunities, and maintaining balance. They do it quietly, without words or thought, but with an intelligence shaped by evolution. Their vocabulary is molecular, but their meaning is unmistakable. Connection, awareness, and adaptation. If we slow down enough to notice, the world begins to change. The gentle smell after rain becomes more than a pleasant aroma. It becomes a message of renewal, a sign that the forest is breathing again. The faint scent of pine on a warm afternoon becomes a reminder that the trees are alive, sensing the same sunlight that warms our skin. Every fragrance we take for granted is part of an ancient code, one that flows through every ecosystem on Earth. At dusk, when the last light fades through the branches, the forest's scent deepens. Moisture rises, carrying with it a rich mix of resins, oils, and unseen whispers. To the creatures of the night, these are signals of opportunity, where to feed, where to hide, where danger lingers. To us, they are simply beautiful, though perhaps that beauty itself is part of the design. We are drawn to these scents not by accident, but because life recognizes life. The air is the meeting place between our breath and the breath of the trees, a space where the forest's language becomes our own. The next time you find yourself surrounded by trees, pause and breathe in. The forest is speaking. Every molecule that enters your lungs carries the story of what has happened, what is happening, and what may come. Somewhere a tree is warning another. Somewhere else a flower is calling its pollinator home. The air itself is alive with quiet intent, and you too are part of that silent conversation, listening, participating, and passing through the messages. When a caterpillar lands on a leaf and takes its first bite, the forest seems still, but beneath that quiet, an invisible alarm spreads. The bitten leaf releases volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, drifting through the air like a coded whisper. To human senses, it's imperceptible, but to neighboring plants, it's the equivalent of a fire alarm. Within moments, nearby leaves start producing bitter chemicals, making themselves less appealing to herbivores. What seems like a single tree reacting in isolation is, in truth, a coordinated response, a silent dialogue of defense echoing through the woodland. Plants, though rooted and still, are never truly helpless. They live surrounded by constant threats. Insects, fungi, grazing animals, droughts, even human interference. Yet they've evolved one of nature's most remarkable survival strategies: communication. When one is hurt, it warns others. When danger passes, signals fade and normal life resumes. These messages are not shouts of panic, but chemical poems, intricate and precise. They carry information: what attacked, where it happened, how severe it was, and each message invites a reply. Imagine a stand of acacia trees in the African savanna. As a giraffe begins munching on their leaves, the acacia reacts within minutes, releasing ethylene gas. This gas travels through the air to nearby trees, warning them of the intruder. The neighboring acacias respond by flooding their leaves with tannins, making them toxic or too bitter to eat. Some even reduce the flow of sap to make the leaves tougher and less nutritious. To the giraffe, the meal quickly turns unpleasant. It moves on, unaware that it's been outwitted by a community of trees acting together. The forest, though silent, defended itself. In the Amazon rainforest, similar battles unfold. Certain vines release distress compounds that attract predatory insects when chewed on by caterpillars. The predators arrive not out of kindness but hunger, devouring the attackers and saving the plant in the process. In grasslands, maize plants under assault by rootworms send signals underground through their roots, calling for allies, beneficial nematodes that attack the pest larvae. Each system is elegant, ancient, and cooperative. The forest doesn't just respond to attack, it remembers. Plants exposed to stress often prime themselves for future threats. A tree bitten once by insects may react faster and stronger the next time, as if recalling the event. Scientists describe this as plant memory, though it works through biochemical patterns rather than neurons. Molecules, not thoughts, store the experience, but the result feels strangely alive, as if the forest keeps its own quiet diary of struggles and recoveries, written in invisible ink. Underground, the conversation continues. Through fungal networks, the mycorrhizal threads that link roots across vast distances, trees can send warning signals far beyond what air alone can carry. When one tree detects a pathogen in the soil, it may transfer defensive compounds or trigger immune responses in its neighbors through this shared network. Some even share carbon or nutrients with weaker trees, keeping them alive during hard times. It's not altruism in a human sense, but a system evolved for balance. A stable, healthy forest benefits all its members. Yet these dialogues are not always peaceful. Some plants use deception instead of cooperation. A parasitic species might release chemicals mimicking distress signals to confuse others, or to draw resources its way. Some release compounds that inhibit the growth of competitors nearby. A silent act of chemical sabotage. The forest is a stage for both alliance and rivalry, its harmony maintained through tension as much as cooperation. In northern forests, willows attacked by caterpillars have been shown to release warning VOCs that trigger defenses not just in nearby willows, but even in unrelated species like birch and poplar. These cross-species alerts hint at something broader, an ecological intelligence that doesn't stop at genetic kinship. The forest seems to operate as a single organism, a self-balancing network of thousands of quiet participants. When we walk through the woods after rain, breathing in that deep earthy scent, petrichor, as scientists call it, we are inhaling the forest's breath. Mixed within that fragrance are traces of those same chemical signals, defensive compounds, pheromones, fungal byproducts. Every molecule tells a story. Some carry the scent of alarm, others of growth, some of calm. If we could decode them, we might hear a continuous conversation all around us, one that never truly stops, even in sleep or winter stillness. Defensive dialogues also shape ecosystems in surprising ways. When a few trees begin producing bitter tannins or alkaloids, herbivore populations shift. Insects migrate, predators follow, and slowly, patterns of feeding and growth change. These ripple effects ensure that no single species dominates for long. The forest, through its collective chemistry, maintains equilibrium. In a way, this is the forest's immune system. Just as white blood cells communicate to fight infection, trees and plants share molecular signals to ward off danger. It's a defense built on cooperation rather than aggression, a kind of communal resilience. Even fallen leaves and decaying roots continue to contribute. Their breakdown products alter soil chemistry, influencing the next generation's defenses. This silent coordination is one of nature's greatest ironies. The most complex social systems can exist without movement or speech. It's easy to overlook because we equate noise with activity, speech with intelligence. But here, in the hush of green life, strategy and response unfold faster than we imagine. measured not in seconds, but in waves of scent, in the shimmer of unseen molecules. Philosophically, there's a kind of humility in this realization. The forest doesn't fight with anger. It doesn't panic. It adapts, cooperates, and endures. Its methods remind us that survival isn't always about domination. Sometimes it's about connection. The trees do not scream when hurt, but they speak nonetheless, reminding us that silence doesn't mean absence of voice. As dusk falls and the forest cools, the volatile scents settle. The leaves relax, the chemical chatter softens to a hum. The danger has passed. Somewhere, a caterpillar drifts into sleep on a half-eaten leaf, unaware of the drama it began. The trees remain standing, their roots intertwined, their signals fading into the still night. Tomorrow, if the threat returns, the dialogue will begin anew. Quiet, coordinated, and utterly alive. In the language of the forest, defense is not war. It is understanding. It is life speaking softly to itself. The forest may seem like a world of stillness, but to those who can sense beyond human eyes and ears, it's alive with conversation. Not the kind carried by sound, but by color, scent, and shimmer. Flowers, in particular, are fluent in this silent language. Expert persuaders who have mastered the art of attraction. Their goal is simple yet profound: to invite the right visitor at the right time to ensure the continuation of life. When a bee drifts across a meadow, it's not simply wandering. It's reading a map painted in ultraviolet light, patterns invisible to us but bright as landing lights to the bee. These markings, called nectar guides, lead directly to the flower's center where the reward waits: sweet nectar and a dusting of pollen. The bee thinks it's feeding, but the flower has its own plan. With each visit, pollen sticks to the bee's body and travels to the next bloom, completing a silent transaction. The plant gets pollinated, the bee gets food. A perfect trade. Each flower species has evolved a signature signal, a combination of color, shape, texture, and fragrance designed to appeal to specific pollinators. Bright red petals lure hummingbirds, whose eyes are drawn to that wavelength. Pale night-blooming flowers open under moonlight, releasing heavy perfume to call moths from afar. Some flowers even change color after pollination, as if putting up a closed sign to save a pollinator's time. Every signal has purpose, every gesture precise. Fragrance is one of nature's oldest languages. The sweet scent of jasmine, the spicy aroma of clove, the rich musk of orchids, all are messages carried on air currents. To insects, these aren't just pleasant smells, but coordinates guiding them through the forest. Even subtle differences in chemical composition can direct a bee to a specific species among thousands. In tropical rainforests, certain orchids mimic the pheromones of female bees, fooling the males into approaching and unknowingly carrying pollen. It's a trick as elegant as it is deceptive. Nature's quiet con artistry in bloom. Sometimes the communication is a duet. In the deserts of the American Southwest, yucca plants and yucca moths share a relationship built on mutual trust. The moth gathers pollen from one flower and deliberately transfers it to another while laying her eggs inside. The larvae later feed on a portion of the developing seeds. Never too many. Just enough to sustain themselves without harming the plant's future. Both species depend on each other completely. It's a living agreement written not in words, but in behavior, scent, and instinct. Pollinators are not just passive visitors. They are active participants in the dialogue. Bees can learn and remember the appearance and smell of flowers that reward them best. They pass this knowledge through a remarkable form of communication, the waggle dance, guiding others in the hive toward the most promising sources. The hive itself becomes an echo of the floral network outside, connected by invisible lines of scent and motion. A single bee's flight can influence the behavior of hundreds of others, linking thousands of flowers in a vast web of cooperation. Even sound has a place in this exchange. Recent research has shown that some flowers can sense vibrations, the hum of a bee's wings, for instance, and respond within minutes by increasing nectar sugar concentration. It's as if the flower recognizes a familiar visitor and rewards it for arriving. In return, the pollinator becomes loyal, returning again and again. This subtle adaptability reveals that plants don't just send signals, they listen too. Color, meanwhile, is both invitation and filter. A field of wildflowers looks random to us, but it's carefully designed to divide the attention of pollinators. Blue and violet attract bees. Red draws birds. White or pale yellow invites night-flying moths and bats. These preferences prevent overcrowding and ensure that each pollinator species serves a distinct role in the ecosystem. Through color, the forest orchestrates balance. The deception can also take darker forms. Some orchids offer no nectar at all. Instead, they imitate the color and scent of richer flowers nearby, tricking pollinators into stopping by. Others mimic the look and smell of decaying flesh, drawing carrion flies that unwittingly carry pollen from one corpse-like bloom to another. The rafflesia, one of the largest flowers in the world, emits such a powerful odor of rot that it attracts flies from miles away. It's gruesome yet brilliant. Proof that even repulsion can be a form of persuasion. Every season, this invisible exchange keeps life moving. The buzzing in a summer meadow, the flutter of wings in spring, the faint perfume of autumn flowers. These are not random acts of beauty. They are signals in a vast biological network. Without them, forests would fall silent in more ways than one. Pollinators carry the seeds of continuity, ensuring that fruits form, seeds disperse, and future generations of trees and flowers emerge. In this grand design, every participant benefits, though not always consciously. The butterfly doesn't know it's maintaining the balance of an ecosystem. The flower doesn't know it's ensuring the survival of countless species that depend on its fruit. Yet together, their interactions sustain nearly every food chain on Earth. Over 75% of flowering plants rely on animal pollinators. Remove them, and the quiet would become devastatingly real. A stillness that marks loss, not peace. From an emotional view, this dance between plant and pollinator feels almost tender. There's a kind of devotion in the way a bee returns to the same species day after day, or how a night-blooming cactus opens only for a single moth. It's a partnership older than civilization, written into the DNA of both. To watch a hummingbird hover before a blossom is to witness communication distilled into pure motion. No sound, no language, yet full of understanding. Even the smallest gestures carry meaning. The way a petal curves just enough to brush a bee's back, the timing of a flower's opening aligned with sunrise, the release of scent only when humidity is right. These are precise responses shaped by millions of years of coevolution. They are nature's choreography, perfected through patience rather than intention. At its heart, pollinator persuasion is not manipulation, but cooperation. It's a shared story between species, one where survival depends on the ability to connect across boundaries. The forest's beauty lies not only in its colors and scents, but in the invisible logic behind them. The understanding that life itself thrives on attraction, exchange, and trust. If we could see the world as bees do, in ultraviolet hues and scent trails, the landscape would appear as an intricate web of messages, radiant patterns guiding life from one bloom to another. Each flower would glow with meaning, Each flight would be part of a conversation older than words. In the end, the forest doesn't just grow, it persuades. It whispers to wings and hums to hearts, weaving together a tapestry of cooperation so subtle, so breathtakingly complex, that we only glimpse its edges. The next time a bee lands on a flower, remember, it's not simply gathering. When dawn spills over the forest, light doesn't just awaken the leaves, it speaks to them. Each ray carries information: where the sun is rising, how tall the neighbors have grown, which direction to stretch toward, and when to begin the quiet work of the day. To a tree, light is not just illumination, it's language. Every shift in brightness, color, or shadow is a message written across the sky. At first glance, sunlight seems simple, a steady, golden flow. But plants read it like poets interpret rhythm, with precision, nuance, and memory. Hidden inside every leaf are photoreceptors, tiny molecular eyes that sense the quality, duration, and direction of light. These sensors help a plant decide how to grow, when to flower, when to sleep, and even how to defend itself. There are many kinds of these light-sensitive molecules. Some detect red light, others sense blue or ultraviolet. Together, they create a complex communication system. When red light strikes a seedling, it signals that the way is open, that sunlight is strong, and growth can proceed. But if that light shifts toward the far red, filtered through other leaves above, the message changes. You're in the shade. The plant doesn't need eyes to know it's being crowded. It simply interprets the color ratio and adjusts, growing taller, stretching toward a gap in the canopy. This ability to read light makes forests dynamic societies of adaptation. Each plant is constantly listening, watching, adjusting, not randomly, but thoughtfully in its own silent way. In dense woodlands, saplings sense how much light older trees block and bide their time, conserving energy until a storm brings down a giant and sunlight floods the gap. Then, almost instantly, they surge upward as if responding to a whispered signal. Now is your turn. In open meadows, where competition is fierce, plants fine-tune their shape to balance sunlight with wind resistance. Leaves angle themselves to catch the perfect amount of light without overheating. Some rotate gently throughout the day, tracking the sun's arc across the sky. Others close at night, folding inward like living clocks keeping time with the planet's spin. Even underground roots respond to light indirectly, guided by chemical messages sent from the leaves above. The forest canopy itself behaves like a vast, breathing sensor. Each layer filters sunlight differently, painting the ground below with shifting patterns of shade and glow. These dappled signals tell seedlings not only where light is, but where it will be. Through this continuous dialogue, the forest achieves harmony. No tree grows blindly, no branch extends without purpose. For trees, light is also a social cue. Through the delicate interplay of shadow and reflection, they sense their neighbor's presence. A tree growing too close to another will detect the faint change in reflected light and alter its growth direction, avoiding unnecessary competition. This awareness prevents overcrowding and ensures survival for all. It's as if each tree respects an invisible boundary drawn in sunlight. In some species, like the sensitive mimosa or climbing vines, this perception becomes even more expressive. A vine doesn't simply reach out at random. It senses where light filters through gaps and sends tendrils toward that promise. When it encounters shade, it knows another plant is near and may adjust its strategy, curling or redirecting its growth to find a better path. Every movement is guided by the silent grammar of light and shadow. The language of light is not limited to growth. It shapes time itself for plants. Through photoperiodism, the ability to measure day length, plants know when to bloom, when to fruit, and when to rest. Long days tell summer flowers to open, while shortening days whisper that autumn is near. Even in places where clouds hide the sun, plants sense subtle shifts in brightness, staying synchronized with the seasons. There is a rhythm in this sensitivity, one that mirrors the cycles of our own lives. Just as we rise with the morning and slow as dusk falls, the forest follows its luminous script. But where we experience time in hours and minutes, trees experience it in gradients of light. The faintest changes, the softest hues. The calm awe of this awareness is profound. Imagine a being that cannot move, yet perceives the world through color and warmth, that tracks the sky's mood, and remembers the length of yesterday's light to decide tomorrow's growth. That is what every leaf does, quietly, day after day. It is a form of perception so patient and so complete that it humbles our idea of consciousness. In some ways, the forest behaves like a living solar network. When one part senses change, a sudden dimming, a cloudy interruption, the first glint of dawn, responses ripple through the ecosystem. Flowers open, insects stir, birds begin their calls. The trees themselves begin their slow exchange of gases, drawing in carbon dioxide, releasing oxygen, shifting their internal chemistry in tune with the returning light. It's an orchestration without a conductor, yet flawlessly timed. Scientists have discovered that light doesn't only guide growth, it can also influence behavior at a microscopic level. Some plants, when shaded by others, release hormones that signal stress or competition. Others, when exposed to the right light wavelengths, strengthen their defenses or alter their leaf structure to reduce loss. These reactions show a subtle intelligence, a capacity to interpret environmental cues and respond meaningfully. Even the moon plays a part in this dialogue. Certain plants open their flowers only under moonlight, their pale petals reflecting silver glow to attract nocturnal pollinators. Others synchronize their internal rhythms with lunar cycles, timing their reproduction to tides and light intensity. The forest, it seems, doesn't sleep so much as it changes conversation partners, from the sun by day to the moon by night. Light also connects generations. A young seedling carries within it the genetic memory of how its ancestors responded to light. This memory allows it to adapt faster, almost anticipating conditions before they arrive. Evolution has encoded the forest's experience into every cell, so that each leaf, each stem, continues the story told by sunlight over millennia. To walk through a forest aware of this silent dialogue is to feel part of something vast. The play of light through branches, the slow tilting of leaves, the shimmer on a stream. These are not accidents of beauty, but signs of communication. The world around you is listening, adjusting, thriving. We often think of light as something that shows us the world, but for plants, light is the world. The message, the energy, the memory. It tells them when to live and when to rest, when to share space and when to reach higher. It is their teacher, their timekeeper, their voice. In the stillness of morning, when the first beams slip through mist and strike the dew-laced leaves, remember that the forest is reading. It is not merely waking. It is understanding. The trees are holding a conversation older than language. If you stand quietly in a blooming meadow, long enough to let the hum of bees and the perfume of flowers sink into you, you'll begin to sense that something invisible is unfolding all around. It isn't just a display of colors or a flurry of wings. It's a concert, one made not of notes or instruments, but of molecules drifting through the air. Every flower is a musician, and every breeze carries the melody. This is the language of scent. the forest's chemical symphony of survival. To the human nose, a fragrance is a fleeting pleasure, sweet, sharp, or comforting. But to the insects that roam among the petals, these scents are precise instructions. Each molecule tells them where to fly, what to collect, and when to return. The perfume of a blossom is never accidental. It is carefully crafted by evolution, balanced between invitation and command. A bee, gliding above the grass, is guided by these invisible threads. She doesn't see the world as we do. Instead, she smells it, mapping the air through waves of scent. The lavender calls her with a soft floral hum. The citrus flowers sing in sharper tones. The clover offers a calm, honeyed promise. Each odor is a signature, a distinct musical note in a grander harmony. The bee follows the strongest tune, landing delicately where the air feels thickest with meaning. The flower, meanwhile, has timed its scent with exquisite care. In early morning, when the air is cool and still, volatile molecules travel farthest. Some plants release their fragrance only then, ensuring the first pollinators of the day find them. Others wait until dusk when night-flying moths stir. The timing, concentration, and blend of scents shift like movements in a symphony, each passage perfectly aligned with its intended audience. What we call smell is, in truth, chemistry in motion. Floral scents are made of compounds like terpenes, esters, and aldehydes, names that sound technical, but are nature's notes on a molecular scale. These tiny structures combine in countless ways, forming unique chords that can attract, warn, or even deceive. A single flower might release dozens of different molecules, and the balance between them changes throughout the day, as if the plant were fine-tuning its song. To a bee, these scents tell stories. A strong, consistent perfume says, "This bloom is rich." A faint or irregular one warns, "Already visited." The bee learns to read these cues with astonishing accuracy, wasting no time on empty blossoms. It's an elegant system. The plant saves energy by signaling its condition, and the pollinator conserves effort by listening. Both thrive by communicating honestly, each trusting the other's rhythm. But honesty in nature is never absolute. Some flowers are tricksters, releasing seductive scents with no reward. They lure pollinators only to leave them disappointed and dusted with pollen that must be carried elsewhere. Certain orchids, for instance, imitate the pheromones of female insects, drawing males close in a futile courtship. Yet the insects return, generation after generation, proving that deception, too, has its place in the orchestra of life. Fragrance also builds relationships across time and space. A tree in bloom can perfume an entire valley, signaling its readiness to the buzzing world. In tropical forests, the air becomes a living score, heavy, layered, complex. One plant's scent merges with another's until the atmosphere itself becomes music, a composition of survival. Every whiff is information. Every molecule finds a listener. Even plants that do not rely on insects participate in this aromatic dialogue. Some release scents to ward off herbivores, others to summon allies. When a leaf is bitten, the plant can emit distress compounds that attract predatory insects, wasps or beetles, that attack the herbivores. In these moments, scent becomes a call for help, a defensive melody played into the air. Nearby plants, sensing these molecules, may even prepare their own chemical armor in advance. It's a networked intelligence, a conversation not of thought, but of chemistry. Imagine standing in a forest during spring bloom. To human senses, the air feels rich, maybe sweet. But to those who can interpret it, bees, butterflies, beetles, bats, it's filled with messages. Come here. Stay away. I'm ready. I'm healing. The wind becomes a messenger, carrying these coded fragrances from one living being to another. The forest is never silent. Its music simply plays in frequencies we cannot hear, in scents we can barely grasp. Different pollinators prefer different melodies. Bees love flowers rich in linalool and geraniol, compounds with bright citrusy sweetness. Moths seek heavy nocturnal notes like benzyl acetate, which linger in humid air. Flies, drawn to decay, follow the sour scent of amines. Every insect is tuned to its own scale, and every flower knows which notes to play. This precision keeps the forest's orchestra in balance, ensuring that each performer has its part. When the weather changes, so does the music. Rain washes scents away, forcing flowers to produce more once the sun returns. Heat amplifies aroma, sending stronger signals but consuming more energy. Some plants respond by closing their petals to trap the perfume inside, conserving it like breath held in waiting. Others continue to play, confident that the wind will carry their song to distant listeners. The forest's score is alive, rewritten every moment. There's also memory and scent. Pollinators remember the fragrance of rewarding flowers and return to them. Over time, entire routes are formed, invisible highways linking certain trees and meadows. The forest shapes their travel, and they, in turn, shape the forest's future. A bee that prefers jasmine today might carry the legacy of those blossoms into generations yet to bloom. Humans have always been drawn to these chemical melodies. Long before we understood their purpose, we gathered flowers for their fragrance, distilled them into perfumes, burned them as offerings. In doing so, we joined the same conversation, even without understanding the words. Perhaps our love of scent is a faint memory of the forest's deeper dialogue, a way for us to feel connected to that ancient chemistry. The joy of it lies in noticing the small details, the way a breeze changes the tone of a meadow, the faint sweetness that appears just before sunset, the unseen communication happening between bloom and bee. It's a reminder that the beauty of life doesn't depend on words, but on attention, on being still enough to sense what's already speaking. If you close your eyes and breathe deeply in a garden, the air itself tells a story. It speaks of attraction and defense, of timing and trust. It carries the laughter of bees, the patience of petals, the long wisdom of evolution. Each fragrance, no matter how soft, is an announcement of life continuing, a message written in chemistry, sung on the breeze. The next time you smell a flower, think of it as listening to the world's oldest song. You are catching a single note from an endless composition, one that began long before humans and will play long after us. The forest's perfume beneath the soft carpet of leaves under the soil that breathes with quiet life. There exists a secret world that never sleeps. It is dark there, yet every inch is alive with purpose. Roots move slowly, feeling their way through the earth, touching stones, brushing past worms, finding paths where water flows and minerals hide. But what makes this hidden realm truly magical is the silent language of chemistry. Roots don't just drink from the soil. They speak through it. They send signals, warnings, and invitations, shaping a living network that binds entire forests together. Scientists once thought roots were simple tools of survival, but now they know roots are storytellers, messengers, and negotiators, speaking in molecules instead of words. When one tree meets another underground, they do not collide in silence. They sense each other through faint whispers of carbon compounds and hormones. These chemical trails tell who is friend and who is foe, who is hungry, who is sick, and who needs help. In this hidden web, plants share food not out of kindness, but out of connection. Through a maze of fungi called mycorrhizae, roots link together like nerves in a great forest brain. When one tree gathers sunlight, it can send some of that energy as sugar to another that stands in shadow. When one suffers from drought, others can share water, passing it molecule by molecule through their fungal partners. This is not charity in the human sense. It is the wisdom of balance. Forests thrive not because every tree stands alone, but because every root remembers the rhythm of community. Scientists once laughed at the idea that trees could talk, but now they listen closely. The soil itself hums with messages too complex for human ears, but clear as day to the roots. A young sapling, still tender and small, sends out chemical feelers to test the mood of the soil. If it detects compounds from another plant of its own kind, it grows differently, sometimes taller, sometimes wider, sometimes slower, adjusting its strategy like a cautious traveler in a crowded city. If it senses toxins, it pulls away. If it smells the presence of kin, it softens its growth, sharing space and light. This behavior is called allelopathy, a word that sounds technical but hides deep drama. Through allelopathy, plants release chemicals to help themselves or hinder rivals. Black walnut trees, for instance, drop a compound called juglone, which poisons certain neighbors. It's a ruthless strategy, ensuring space to grow. Yet other plants counter this with their own defenses, turning the soil into a chessboard of invisible moves. Roots can also warn each other of danger. When insects bite into a leaf high above ground, chemical messages rush down the stem and out through the roots into the soil. Fungal threads pick up these signals and pass them on to nearby plants, alerting them to prepare their defenses. Within hours, a quiet network of green life has mobilized for battle. To us it seems like magic, but to plants it's routine. A conversation older than speech. Imagine the forest floor during such an exchange. It looks still, but underneath molecules are flying, hormones surging, sugars shifting. Every root tip is both a mouth and an ear, tasting and listening to the invisible chatter of its neighbors. This language of chemistry is astonishingly precise. A single molecule can mean peace or war, hunger or health. When roots find more nutrients than they need, they sometimes leak small amounts into the soil. Not wastefully, but as an offering. Other species respond by sending helpful bacteria or fungi, forming alliances that benefit everyone involved. It's as if the soil itself is a grand marketplace, where exchanges happen without greed, only balance. Even dead roots don't stop speaking. As they decay, their chemical remains feed others, continuing the conversation in a different form. The soil remembers. Farmers and gardeners often sense this wisdom intuitively. When crops grow in harmony, when rotation enriches the field, they are echoing what forests have practiced for millions of years. Scientists studying these root messages use sensors and isotopes to track the invisible flow of nutrients. They see sugar moving from one tree to another hundreds of feet away. They see nitrogen shared among different species. They see warning signals spreading faster than roots could possibly grow. The conclusion is inescapable. The underground world is alive with awareness. Even more fascinating is how plants manage conflict underground. Competition for resources doesn't always end in destruction. Some roots recognize when they belong to the same genetic family and reduce aggression. Others form peace treaties through mutual chemical restraint. A mother tree can feed her seedlings through the fungal web, keeping them alive until they reach the light. This gentle persistence, this cooperation mixed with quiet rivalry, makes the forest resilient. The soil, rich with voices, becomes an orchestra where every molecule plays its part. The idea of trees helping each other can feel almost human, yet it comes from something far older and wiser than our empathy. It is survival written in chemistry. When we walk through a forest, the roots beneath our feet are humming with exchanges, messages of need, caution, generosity. A dying tree may send its remaining carbon to others before it falls, ensuring its energy lives on. A healthy one may sense this and adjust its own growth in response. This is not a fairy tale. This is biochemistry, proven by decades of research. And still it feels poetic because it speaks of connection in the purest form. Imagine standing among ancient pines or oaks, feeling the ground pulse faintly with unseen life. Beneath your boots, a web stretches across the earth, touching every tree, every shrub, every tiny sprout. The air above may seem quiet, but the ground below is busy with chemical music. Each molecule that moves through that soil carries a message of survival, cooperation, and memory. The forest floor is not silent, it is whispering. If we could translate these root messages into words, perhaps they would sound something like this. Grow, share, beware, remember. These are the 4 laws of the underground world. To grow means to reach for the unknown. To share means to stay connected. To beware means to sense danger and adapt. And to remember means never to forget the past, the drought, the fire, the rain that once was kind. Roots never forget where they've been. The soil beneath an old forest holds the chemical memories of centuries. When new seedlings sprout, they inherit this wisdom through the molecules still swirling in the dirt. In our fast, noisy world, this slow communication seems miraculous. It reminds us that intelligence doesn't always require a brain. Sometimes it hides in the dark, underfoot, moving with patience and precision, teaching us the art of quiet connection. The next time you walk barefoot on the ground, remember that beneath you lies an ancient web older than language, wiser than technology, and still whispering secrets of life. The story of roots is not about isolation, but intimacy. The deeper they grow, the more they touch, the more they learn. They do not seek fame or recognition. They seek harmony. Their signals, their chemistry, their shared breath through the soil. All of it forms a conversation that sustains every leaf above. To know this is to look at the earth differently. To feel awe not at what grows from the ground, but at what happens beneath it. Every forest is a mind made of roots. Every root is a thought, stretching silently through the soil, reminding us that connection, not competition, is the true rhythm of life. In a forest, life is constant, delicate, and sometimes harsh. Leaves are torn by insects, bark is scarred by storms, branches break under the weight of snow. Yet in this ever-changing environment, the forest does not panic. Instead, it communicates. It heals, it warns. Beneath the apparent stillness, a web of signals spreads through air, soil, and water, allowing trees and plants to respond to damage, protect themselves, and even help their neighbors survive. When a leaf is nibbled by a caterpillar, the injury is not just local. Chemicals move rapidly through the plant, activating defenses in leaves still untouched. Tannins increase, bitter compounds accumulate, and enzymes that deter herbivores flood the affected tissues. To the casual observer, it may seem as though the plant reacts instinctively. In reality, it is reading its own signals, interpreting the attack, and orchestrating a response with remarkable precision. The tree's body becomes a networked system of alerts and repairs, a living blueprint of resilience. But the forest does not stop at self-defense. Roots and fungal networks carry chemical messages to nearby plants, warning them that danger lurks. Neighboring trees begin producing protective compounds in advance, sometimes before the threat reaches them. It is a subtle form of preemptive care, a form of intelligence expressed not through thought, but through chemistry. Plants do not have brains, yet their behavior shows memory, anticipation, and coordination. A tree under attack teaches its neighbors how to survive the same fate, using signals that are invisible, silent, yet incredibly precise. insects are not the only threat. Pathogens, fungi, and even environmental stressors like drought or high heat provoke similar warning systems. When a tree senses a pathogen, it releases volatile organic compounds into the air, alerting nearby plants to bolster their defenses. Underground, roots secrete defensive chemicals that travel through fungal networks, reaching distant members of the community. This dual communication, above and below ground, ensures that the forest as a whole can respond faster than any individual organism could alone. Healing itself is a slow and deliberate process. When bark is damaged, a tree produces new cells to seal wounds, redirecting nutrients and hormones to rebuild tissue. In some cases, trees even produce antimicrobial compounds to prevent infection. Yet these repairs are not solitary. Nearby plants may respond to these healing signals by fortifying themselves, creating a network of mutual protection. The forest functions like a living hospital, each tree contributing to the care of the whole, each leaf and root a participant in a silent, sophisticated system of survival. Seasonal changes also play a role in these regenerative signals. During periods of growth, plants allocate more energy to repair and resilience. In winter or dry seasons, they conserve resources, relying on stored chemical signals and slow communication through fungal networks. Even dormant roots and fallen leaves continue to participate. Decomposing matter releases nutrients and signals that prepare seedlings for future growth. In this way, the past and present overlap. The forest remembers the challenges it has faced and uses that memory to guide its response. Some trees specialize in long-term support. Older, dominant individuals often share resources with younger saplings. Through root and fungal connections, carbon and nitrogen flow from mature trees to those in need. If a sapling is damaged or under stress, it can receive these nutrients, improving its chances of survival. The older trees do not act out of conscious choice but as part of an evolved system of mutual benefit. It is a form of distributed intelligence. The forest survives because its members respond to each other, sustaining the community even at personal cost. The elegance of this system extends to chemical diversity. Plants produce hundreds of compounds with specific functions. Some repel herbivores, others attract beneficial insects. Some stimulate root growth in neighbors, others inhibit competing species. When a tree is wounded, the exact mix of chemicals it releases depends on the type of attack, the species involved, and the condition of its environment. This adaptive specificity is evidence of an intelligence built not from cognition, but from millions of years of evolution, encoded in every molecule, every cell, every branch. Even in the quietest moments, healing and warning continue. A gust of wind may snap a twig, a beetle may chew at bark, a fungus may colonize the soil. Each event triggers chemical responses, small shifts in the forest's collective state. Over time, these repeated interactions create resilience. Forests recover from storms, fires, and infestations not by chance, but through communication and cooperation. Each injury teaches the community. Each threat shapes its behavior, and each healing process reinforces the bonds between plants. Researchers have discovered that some plants can remember past attacks. When exposed to stress, they adjust their future responses, priming themselves and their neighbors for similar challenges. This memory is stored in molecular patterns, changes in gene expression, and chemical composition. When a tree is attacked once, it reacts faster and more effectively the next time. And when it communicates these signals, neighboring plants benefit as well. The forest operates as a distributed system of intelligence, where experience is shared and adaptation is collective. Even the smallest signals have profound effects. Volatile compounds released by one leaf can travel meters through the air, while chemical messages in soil can move through kilometers of root networks. These signals are precise, directional, and context-dependent. They tell plants not just to defend, but how, when, and where. A tree under mild stress may signal subtle protective adjustments, while a severe attack triggers a cascade of robust defenses throughout the community. The forest's communication is dynamic, responsive, and extraordinarily efficient. The wonder of this system is in its invisibility. To us, the forest appears calm, maybe even passive. We see sunlight filtering through leaves, hear birds singing, and smell the earth. But beneath the surface, a continuous flow of information keeps the ecosystem alive and balanced. Wounds heal, predators are countered, nutrients are shared, and young trees survive because the forest talks. It is a form of intelligence that does not require thought, speech, or eyes. Yet it coordinates life on a scale beyond human imagination. When a storm passes, and the damage is counted in broken branches and scattered leaves, the forest does not collapse. It communicates, regenerates, and adapts. Fallen branches decompose, releasing nutrients and chemical cues that prepare the soil for new growth. Damaged trees recover, often stronger in the areas that were stressed, as if learning from the experience. And through it all, the chemical conversations continue, unseen, shaping the forest's present and future. This silent system teaches a quiet lesson. Life does not require noise or visible activity to be intelligent. Healing, warning, and mutual support happen invisibly, yet effectively. Forests survive through connection, through the constant exchange of information, through chemical symphonies that orchestrate growth, defense, and renewal. Every leaf, every root, every molecule participates. It is a story of survival, written not in words, but in molecules, rhythms, and patience. To walk through such a forest is to witness resilience in action. Each leaf glistens not only with dew, but with the echoes of past conversations. Each root tip feels the pulse of neighbors, ready to respond to change. The forest thrives not because individual plants are strong, but because the community communicates, heals, and warns as one. Intelligence is not limited to brains. It is present in the quiet, in the patient, in the chemical symphonies that sustain life in the shadows. And so, the forest teaches us calm intrigue. It shows that survival is not only about strength or speed. It is about listening, adapting, and sharing information. A tree's injury is not merely its own story. It is a chapter in the collective narrative. A forest's ability to heal is a testament to interconnected intelligence. When we pause, breathe, and sense the quiet around us, we are witnessing one of the most extraordinary forms of awareness on Earth. Subtle, step quietly into an ancient forest, and you enter a world that exists on a scale far beyond human years. The air is cooler here, heavy with the scent of moss, earth, and the slow decay of centuries. Each tree you pass is more than wood and leaves. It is a living archive, a keeper of stories written in rings, bark, and branching patterns. To stand among these giants is to feel time stretched, folded, and remembered in ways we can only begin to imagine. The oldest trees, like the bristlecone pines of North America, survive thousands of years. Their rings are not merely markers of age, but chronicles of life. Winters survived, droughts endured, fires weathered. Every year a new ring forms, a quiet testament to resilience. Scientists can read these rings like pages in a history book, uncovering not just climatic patterns but ecological events. Insect infestations, storms, even the arrival of neighboring species. Each tree carries a memory, a record of a world that existed long before humans walked the forest floor. Trees are more than passive record keepers. They interact with their environment in ways that suggest awareness and long-term planning. In a grove of ancient oaks, for example, older trees share nutrients with younger saplings through intertwined root networks. This is not simply a survival tactic. It is a strategy that maintains the stability of the community over centuries. By supporting the next generation, ancient trees ensure that the forest's legacy continues. Each tree is both a historian and a guardian, linking past, present, and future. Even when a tree dies, it continues to speak. Fallen trunks decompose slowly, releasing nutrients and chemical signals into the soil. Fungi and bacteria process these nutrients, making them available for seedlings that will one day replace the giants. The memory of the tree lives on in these chemical legacies. In a sense, death becomes another form of communication, a final message to the forest. The story continues. Ancient forests are not static. They are continuous narratives, evolving yet deeply rooted in history. Beyond chemical and nutrient signals, trees record time through physical features. Scars on bark mark past injuries. Lightning strikes, animal damage, human impact. The growth patterns of branches reveal years of wind and sun, stretching toward light in some seasons, bending under snow in others. Moss and lichen on trunks tell of humidity, rainfall, and temperature shifts over decades. Observing these details, one senses a profound continuity, as though each tree holds a diary of environmental change written across centuries. Some trees even exhibit forms of memory that extend beyond their own bodies. Studies have shown that older trees can influence the development of surrounding plants through the chemical networks in the soil. Saplings growing near a long-lived tree often display enhanced resistance to stress and disease, benefiting from the knowledge encoded in their elders' molecules. In this way, the wisdom of ancient trees is shared, passed silently yet effectively across generations. It is a memory that is collective, built on centuries of survival and adaptation. In forests untouched by human development, this continuity is particularly striking. Step beneath the canopy of a temperate rainforest in the Pacific Northwest, and you will see moss-draped trees hundreds of feet tall, ferns carpeting the forest floor, and a sense of stillness that is almost reverent. Each organism is part of a long chain of life, connected not only by roots and fungal networks, but by the passage of time itself. The forest becomes a living museum, every tree a curator, every leaf a page in the unfolding story of centuries. To feel awe in an ancient forest is to sense this depth of memory. When sunlight filters through towering trunks, it illuminates not just space but history. The shadows cast on the ground are shadows of generations, hints of storms endured long ago, of seeds dropped by birds that came and went centuries past. Standing there, one cannot help but feel the presence of something older than oneself, a silent witness to time, patiently enduring, quietly shaping the world. Ancient trees also teach about resilience. The oldest specimens often grow in harsh, unforgiving environments. Rocky slopes, arid plateaus, or windswept ridges. They adapt slowly but effectively, conserving resources, repairing damage, and maintaining balance. Each ring of growth is a testament to survival under pressure, each knot a marker of lessons learned. The forest itself becomes a school, with trees instructing younger generations through the example of endurance, patience, and adaptability. Even the interactions between ancient trees and their environment reveal intelligence. Some species adjust their leaf orientation to maximize sunlight efficiency over decades. Others release chemical signals that shape the composition of understory plants, influencing which seedlings thrive. In this way, ancient trees actively manage their surroundings, subtly guiding the forest's development over centuries. It is a stewardship that surpasses human planning, rooted in instinct, evolution, and an understanding of long-term balance. Time in ancient forests is not linear. To walk among centuries-old trees is to experience layers of past and present simultaneously. The air carries the echoes of countless seasonal cycles, the scent of fallen leaves from decades ago, mingling with the fragrance of newly opened buds. The soil holds memories of floods, fires, and generations of roots intertwining beneath the surface. Every step becomes a journey through history, a chance to witness the continuum of life shaped over millennia. These forests also remind us of humility. Human lifespans are brief, yet we are capable of altering the environment in profound ways. Ancient trees, in contrast, endure, heal, and communicate on timescales we struggle to grasp. They teach patience, caution, and the power of slow growth. They show that survival depends not only on strength or speed, but on awareness, connection, and adaptability. Observing them is an invitation to reflect on our own place in the broader story of life. The stories these trees carry are not confined to the past. Each ring, scar, and chemical signal contributes to the ongoing evolution of the forest. A young tree today receives the benefits of centuries of adaptation, from soil composition to fungal partnerships, from chemical defenses to structural guidance. The forest is a living archive, and its lessons are not merely academic. They are practical, applied in every moment to ensure survival, balance, and continuity. Even the simplest gestures in an ancient forest hold meaning. A branch stretching toward a patch of sunlight, a fallen log fostering moss, a seedling growing in the shadow of a giant. Each is part of a dialogue that spans centuries. Each interaction reinforces the forest's resilience and transmits wisdom across generations. In this way, ancient forests are more than collections of trees. They are communities of memory, intelligence, and continuity. To hear the voice of an ancient forest, one must listen deeply, not with ears alone, but with awareness. The rustle of leaves, the scent of soil, the subtle tilt of branches, all carry information. Standing silently, one can sense the history embedded in every trunk, the accumulated knowledge of centuries guiding the living ecosystem. It is a voice of patience, endurance, and quiet strength, speaking without sound yet profoundly understood by those willing to pay attention. The reverence inspired by these forests is not sentimental. It is rooted in recognition of intelligence beyond human perception. Ancient trees embody strategies for survival, communication, and adaptation that unfold over lifetimes far longer than our own. They offer lessons in resilience, cooperation, and long-term thinking. They remind us that time is measured not in days or decades alone, but in centuries of experience, quietly preserved in rings of wood, networks of roots, and webs of fungal connections. As you walk among these towering witnesses, feel the continuity beneath your feet. Every step touches centuries of growth, death, and renewal. Every leaf above reflects the endurance of generations. The forest is alive not just in the present but across time, each tree a historian, each root a scribe. Ancient forests speak through their rings, their scars, their interactions, and through the subtle chemistry that connects them to one another. For thousands of years, humans have wandered beneath the same canopies we now study with microscopes and sensors, sensing something profound in the stillness of trees. Long before modern science revealed networks of roots and chemical signals, our ancestors recognized that forests were alive in ways that went beyond what could be seen. They listened to the whisper of leaves, felt the pulse of the wind through branches, and observed how trees endured, adapted, and supported one another. Across cultures, myths, stories, and philosophies grew from this awareness, reflecting a deep, intuitive understanding of plant intelligence that science is only now beginning to confirm. In many ancient cultures, trees were sacred. The Celts revered groves as homes of spirits and keepers of knowledge. Sacred oaks stood at the heart of communities, places of council, ceremony, and reflection. People believed that the trees themselves held wisdom, that the rings of an old oak contained the memory of seasons, storms, and ancestors. To sit beneath such a tree was to enter a classroom older than any written history. Indigenous cultures across the Americas, Africa, and Asia also honored trees as living beings, teachers, and guides. The baobab of Africa, the banyan of India, the cedar of Lebanon. Each tree had stories, each tree had lessons. They were seen as elders, healers, and counselors, offering stability and insight to the human communities that depended on them. Folklore is filled with accounts that sense the intelligence of trees. In Japanese Shinto tradition, sacred groves called Chinju no Mori were believed to house kami, spirits that observed and influenced the world. It was not merely poetic imagination. People noticed patterns in how trees grew, how forests healed, and how the seasons shifted. In Europe, tales spoke of talking trees, wise elders who could guide lost travelers or warn of impending danger. These stories often framed trees as guardians of balance, creatures attuned to their environment and capable of long memory. Even practical traditions reflected this awareness. Farmers and gardeners observed that certain trees improved the soil, protected crops, or signaled seasonal change. Companion planting, crop rotation, and forest gardening are all rooted in observations of how plants communicate and support each other. When elders advised planting near a particular tree or avoiding another, it was often based on centuries of careful attention, an inherited understanding of forest intelligence. The subtle cues of the environment, the timing of flowering, the behavior of animals around trees, all informed human decision-making in ways that modern science now confirms. Philosophers and writers also sensed this intelligence. In the 19th century, Henry David Thoreau walked the woods of Concord and recorded the lives of trees with reverence and curiosity. He noted how forests seemed to have rhythms, how each organism existed in balance with others, and how life unfolded with quiet purpose. Later, writers like Peter Wohlleben would draw on both science and observation to describe forests as social communities, echoing the insights of cultures long before us. Across time, humans have felt the moral and spiritual significance of tree life, intuitively grasping what biologists now describe as communication, memory, and cooperation. In some indigenous traditions, trees are teachers. Stories describe how they guide humans, reveal medicinal knowledge, and provide lessons in patience and resilience. A tree that grows slowly teaches endurance. A tree that bends with the wind teaches flexibility. The interconnectedness of forests mirrors human social values: cooperation, mutual support, and respect for community. These lessons are embedded in ritual, song, and story. They remind us that intelligence and wisdom are not limited to brains, and that life unfolds in networks far larger and older than any single human lifespan. Across continents, humans have also sensed the healing power of forests. Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing in Japan, recognizes that simply being among trees reduces stress, improves immunity, and calms the mind. Indigenous ceremonies often involve walking in groves or sleeping under the stars among trees, listening to their quiet presence. People instinctively understood that trees provide guidance and support, not just for survival, but for emotional and spiritual balance. The wisdom of the forest is not only chemical and physical, it is also perceptible to those willing to slow down, observe, and reflect. Even art and literature are filled with subtle recognitions of plant intelligence. From the Celtic knotwork that celebrates interconnected life to the intricate botanical illustrations of Renaissance artists, humans have always been drawn to the patterns and rhythms of trees. Folktales often depict trees as sentient observers or counselors, capable of responding to human actions. In Native American storytelling, trees sometimes carry the memories of the people themselves, forming a bridge between the human and natural worlds. The symbolism reflects a deep awareness that the forest is alive and aware, capable of interacting with its inhabitants in meaningful ways. Modern science confirms what these traditions long intuited. Trees remember, communicate, and respond. They send chemical messages through roots, release volatile compounds into the air, and adjust growth based on their neighbors. The intelligence observed by indigenous peoples and celebrated in folklore has tangible mechanisms. Yet even now there is a poetic resonance in these old interpretations. When a tree is described as wise, slow, or attentive, it may not think as humans do, but it behaves with awareness and purpose, traits that have inspired awe and reflection for millennia. Human connection to tree wisdom is also evident in philosophy. Ancient Chinese thinkers wrote about the harmony of humans with nature, observing that trees grow in patterns that mirror balance and patience. European Romantic writers emphasized the moral and emotional lessons found in forests, seeing them as teachers of humility and endurance. Even today, mindfulness practices encourage people to observe trees, to notice their rhythm, to slow down and connect. Across time and cultures, humans have recognized that the forest offers insight not just about survival, but about living well, listening deeply, and respecting interdependence. These cultural connections are not relics of the past. They continue to guide contemporary ecological thought and conservation. Understanding the wisdom of trees has shaped reforestation practices, sustainable agriculture, and urban forestry. By listening to the same cues our ancestors observed, flowering patterns, soil conditions, and seasonal behaviors, we align human activity with the forest's rhythms. Folklore and science converge, showing that cultural memory and biological knowledge are complementary ways of understanding life. To reflect on this connection is to recognize that humans are not separate from the forest. We have always been part of its network, observing, learning, and participating in its cycles. Stories, rituals, and traditions encode the lessons of survival, cooperation, and endurance, often in poetic or symbolic form. They remind us that life unfolds in networks, and that awareness does not require words or technology. Even now, when we walk among trees, we feel their silent intelligence, sense their guidance, and absorb the subtle cues of their presence. The forest speaks, and humans have long listened. Through song, story, ritual, and observation, we have understood, in instinctive, emotional, and spiritual ways, the intelligence of plants. Trees offer lessons about patience, resilience, communication, and care. They reveal that life is interconnected, that growth is not only personal but collective, and that wisdom can exist without a brain. By honoring these insights, we strengthen our bond with the natural world, learning not just to survive, but to live in harmony with the intelligence around us. In the quiet moments beneath a grove of ancient trees, one can feel the convergence of knowledge, culture, and biology, folklore and science, tradition and observation, all point to the same truth. Forests are alive in profound ways. They teach, they guide, they remember. Humans who take the time to listen are rewarded with reflection, connection, and awe. In this interplay of stories and reality, the forest's wisdom becomes accessible, not through technology or instruction, but through attention, respect, and presence. Cultural connections remind us that understanding life does not require laboratory tests alone. Long before chemicals and networks were mapped, humans recognized patterns, signals, and relationships in nature. They recorded them in myths, honored them in rituals, and carried them forward in song and story. These connections bridge past and present, showing that the forest's intelligence has been appreciated and interpreted across generations. They invite us to slow down, observe carefully, and participate in a conversation that has been ongoing for millennia. In honoring these cultural connections, we recognize a deeper truth. Wisdom is shared, and understanding is relational. Humans have always been capable of perceiving the forest's intelligence, not as a puzzle to solve, but as a presence to engage with. Through folklore, tradition, and philosophy, we learn that trees are teachers, that forests are communities, and that life itself communicates in subtle, persistent, and profound ways. Listening to these lessons allows us to step into the same rhythm, to feel the pulse of life, and to carry forward the knowledge of generations, both human and. To step into a forest is to enter a world that operates on principles both ancient and profound. Here, life thrives not through competition alone, but through connection, cooperation, and attentiveness. Trees, plants, fungi, and the smallest microorganisms exist in a vast network, each responding to the needs and signals of others, each contributing to the resilience and balance of the whole. For humans, observing these networks offers more than biological insight. It provides a mirror for reflection, a guide for living thoughtfully, and a reminder that survival, creativity, and harmony are deeply intertwined. The first lesson is patience. Forests do not rush. Growth, healing, and adaptation unfold over years, decades, or even centuries. Ancient trees demonstrate that time is not wasted but invested. Every ring, every root, every branch represents a slow, deliberate process of learning and adaptation. Humans, accustomed to speed and immediacy, often forget the value of gradual change. In the forest, we see that strength and resilience emerge from steady, persistent effort, from listening to the environment, and from allowing life to unfold at its natural pace. Cooperation is the second lesson. Trees share nutrients, warn one another of danger, and provide shelter to younger saplings. Mycorrhizal networks act as highways for communication, redistributing resources to maintain balance. There is no central command, no single ruler. Yet collectively, the forest survives and flourishes. For humans, this suggests that community, mutual aid, and decentralized systems of support are not only ethical choices, but practical strategies for resilience. Working together, sharing knowledge, and helping one another strengthens the collective more than individual gain ever could. Communication, subtle yet precise, is the third lesson. Forests convey messages through chemical signals, volatile compounds, and root networks. Plants alert neighbors to threats, coordinate growth, and even influence the behavior of insects and animals. They operate in silence, yet their messages are clear, adaptive, and timely. Humans, too, rely on communication, though ours is often noisy, fragmented, and distracted. Observing the forest teaches that meaningful communication requires attention, awareness, and responsiveness. Listening, observing, and responding thoughtfully can transform interactions, just as the forest transforms life through its silent exchanges. Mindfulness emerges naturally from observing these networks. To understand the forest is to pay attention to small details: the angle of a leaf, the pattern of moss on bark, the timing of flowering. Nothing is accidental. Everything is part of a web of relationships, influencing and being influenced. For humans, mindfulness involves cultivating awareness of our surroundings, our actions, and their impact on others. It is a reminder that life is interconnected and that every choice ripples outward, affecting the community, the environment, and future generations. Another insight is resilience through adaptability. Forests endure storms, fires, droughts, and infestations because they respond, adjust, and sometimes transform. Roots share nutrients after a fire, saplings grow in gaps created by fallen giants, and chemical signals prepare neighbors for similar stresses. Humans, too, face challenges, both personal and collective. The forest shows that resilience is not merely survival, but flexibility. The ability to absorb impact, learn from adversity, and emerge stronger, adapting without losing integrity, supporting one another in times of stress, and remaining open to change are essential lessons for thriving in a complex world. The forest also teaches balance. Each organism exists within a network of give and take. No tree dominates to the exclusion of others, and no resource is hoarded without consequence. Older trees support younger ones. Roots cooperate and compete in measured ways. Ecosystems regulate themselves through feedback and communication. For humanity, this is a reminder that balance between self-interest and collective well-being, between use and conservation, is essential. A society, like a forest, thrives when its members respect the needs of each other and of the environment that sustains them. Attention to long-term thinking is yet another lesson. Forests operate on timescales far beyond human lifespans. Trees grow slowly, ecosystems develop over centuries, and the cumulative wisdom of generations shapes the present. Humans often prioritize immediate gains over sustainability, yet the forest demonstrates that foresight, patience, and care for the future ensure continuity. We can learn to plan with awareness of impact, to make choices that support long-term health, and to recognize that our actions reverberate far beyond today. Observation of healing and warning systems in forests also provides guidance. Trees communicate threats, distribute resources, and recover from injury collectively. This shows that survival is not an isolated endeavor. Humans, too, are social beings, and our communities thrive when we watch for one another, share knowledge, and offer support in times of need. Empathy, proactive care, and responsiveness strengthen not only individuals, but entire networks, mirroring the way forests maintain their stability and health. Creativity and problem-solving emerge naturally in forest networks. Plants and fungi coordinate in ways that optimize resources, avoid conflict, and respond to threats. There is experimentation and feedback. A tree may adjust its growth, a root may change direction, fungi may form new connections. Humans can learn from this adaptive intelligence, recognizing that creative solutions often arise through collaboration, observation, and openness to change. By studying the forest, we see that innovation is not always linear. It thrives in interaction, connection, and flexibility. Respect for memory and history is another profound takeaway. Trees record events in rings, roots, and chemical signals. Forests remember droughts, fires, infestations, and human impact. Humans, too, benefit from remembering our history, both individually and collectively. We can learn from past mistakes, preserve knowledge, and honor lessons that guide future decisions. The forest's memory emphasizes that awareness of the past strengthens resilience and informs more thoughtful choices in the present. Finally, the forest teaches humility. The intelligence of networks, the patience of growth, the precision of chemical signaling, and the interdependence of life remind us that human perspective is only one among many. The forest operates on scales and timelines that surpass our comprehension. It thrives through distributed intelligence, silent coordination, and adaptive learning. Observing it encourages reflection on our place in the world, our reliance on the natural web, and our responsibility to nurture, protect, and learn from these systems. In contemplating these lessons, humans can draw practical and philosophical inspiration. Cooperation, communication, mindfulness, patience, resilience, balance, long-term thinking, creativity, memory, and humility are principles evident in forests and applicable to human life. By aligning with these patterns, we enhance both personal and societal well-being. Observing how trees respond to challenges, support each other, and maintain harmony offers a blueprint for living consciously, compassionately, and sustainably. Walking through a forest with awareness is transformative. Each step becomes a meditation, each observation a lesson. The rustle of leaves, the scent of soil, the gentle sway of branches, all remind us that life is a network of interconnections, that survival depends on cooperation, and that intelligence exists beyond human thought. By paying attention, we participate in a larger story, one that stretches back through time and will continue long after we are gone. The forests invite reflection on our own networks, families, communities, societies, and ecosystems. How do we communicate? How do we support each other? How do we balance individual needs with collective well-being? The answers may lie not only in human innovation, but in the patient, deliberate, and intricate lessons of the trees. They model a life of connection, responsibility, and awareness, showing that wisdom is often found not in words or technology, but in observation, attention, and respect. As we leave the forest, carrying these lessons into our daily lives, we take with us more than knowledge. We take a sense of alignment with natural principles, a reminder of interdependence, and a call to act thoughtfully. Cooperation, communication, and mindfulness are not abstract ideals. They are survival strategies honed by millions of years of evolution, available for humans to learn and embody. Forests, through their networks, their healing, and their quiet intelligence, invite us to reflect, adapt, and grow. Ultimately, the lessons of the forest are both practical and poetic. They encourage us to live with awareness of the unseen connections that sustain life, to value cooperation over isolation, to communicate with intention, and to cultivate patience, resilience, and humility. By observing forests as teachers, we gain insight into the art of living well, not just for ourselves, but for the communities, ecosystems, and future generations with whom we share the planet. The silent conversations of trees, their networks of care and warning, and their centuries of memory remind us that wisdom is often quiet,